She had never planned to stay long in Colorado. It was supposed to be a temporary stop, a place to earn some money, clear her head, and decide what came next. The mountains felt honest to her, solid and unmoving, unlike the rest of her life, which seemed to shift without warning. She worked as a waitress in a small roadside diner just outside a quiet town, the kind of place where regulars ordered the same meal every day and strangers stood out the moment they walked in. She learned faces quickly, smiles out of habit, and how to listen without being heard. Most evenings ended the same way. She wiped down counters, tied her apron, and stepped outside into the cold air, her breath fogging under the dim yellow parking lot lights. She rented a small room nearby and usually walked home, enjoying the silence after hours of clattering dishes and forced cheer. People remembered her as polite, reserved, always a little tired. No one remembered her mentioning fear or trouble or plans to leave. She seemed steady, predictable, safe. The night she disappeared was unremarkable in every way that mattered. She clocked out late, later than usual, after covering for another waitress who didn't show. A few customers lingered, stretching their coffee long past closing. When she finally left, the town was quiet, almost empty. Cameras near the diner showed her crossing the lot, phone in hand, glancing down at the screen as if reading a message. That was the last confirmed image of her. By morning, her absence felt strange, but not alarming. She didn't show up for her shift, which was unlike her, but people assumed she was sick or asleep. It wasn't until evening that concern settled in. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her room was untouched. No note, no packed bags, no missing clothes. It was as if she had stepped out for a moment and never come back. Searches began small and grew quickly. Friends, co-workers, volunteers, and police combed nearby roads and trails. Posters went up on storefront windows and telephone poles. Her photo stared back at the town from every angle, smiling, alive, frozen in a moment before everything went wrong. The mountains that once felt comforting now seemed vast and indifferent, capable of swallowing anyone without a trace. Days turned into weeks. Leads came and went, none solid. A driver thought he saw her near the highway. A hiker reported a scream echoing through trees late at night. Nothing could be proven. Each rumor raised hope, only to crush it again. Her name drifted from headlines to side columns, from urgent alerts to quiet concern. People spoke about her in the past tense without realizing it. 2 months passed. Winter crept in, dusting fields with frost and sealing the ground hard. The search slowed, then stopped. Officials said they would follow new information if it appeared, but everyone understood what that meant. Most disappearances did not end well. The town began to move on, though uneasily, as if afraid that forgetting her might somehow be a betrayal. It was a call from a farmer that reopened everything. He owned land several miles outside town, an area rarely visited, dotted with old structures left behind when families moved away. One barn, half collapsed and rotting, had caught his attention. He thought animals had been getting inside. When he went to check, he noticed something unnatural in the dirt, marks that didn't belong to wildlife. Inside the barn, the air was damp and heavy. Light barely reached the corners. That was where they found her. She was alive. The shock of it rippled outward, disbelief traveling faster than relief. She was weak, thin, barely responsive, her body curled inward as if trying to disappear. Chains lay nearby, rusted but unmistakable. The space showed signs of prolonged confinement, though no one could explain how she had survived there for so long, unseen, unheard. She was taken to the hospital under heavy guard. Doctors worked quickly, carefully, speaking in low voices. News spread before officials could contain it. The waitress who vanished had been found, alive, Every detail ignited questions. How had she ended up there? Who had taken her? Why that barn, that place, so close yet completely hidden? When she finally opened her eyes, she didn't speak, not at first. Her gaze moved slowly, cautiously, as if testing reality. People said she flinched at sudden sounds, that her hands shook even at rest. She asked for water. She asked where she was. She did not ask about the time she had lost. Investigators waited, knowing pressure could shatter what little strength she had left. But the town waited too, restless and hungry for answers. Fear crept in alongside relief. If she could vanish from a lit parking lot and be hidden for 2 months, then anyone could. That night, as snow fell quietly outside the hospital windows, she finally spoke a few words. Not a full story, just enough to make one thing clear. She had not been alone when she disappeared, and whoever had taken her might not be finished yet. The first thing she remembered clearly was the sound. Not a voice, not footsteps, but the hollow echo of metal shifting against metal. A dull scrape that repeated itself in her mind long after she woke up in the hospital. Doctors asked gentle questions, nurses offered reassurance, but her memories didn't return in order. They came in fragments, sharp and sudden, like glass rising from deep water. She remembered leaving the diner, the cold, the quiet road. She remembered thinking how peaceful everything felt, how the town seemed asleep. Then there was the sense of being watched, not dramatic, not obvious, just a pressure at the back of her neck. She had turned once, expecting to see nothing. That was when someone spoke her name. She couldn't remember the face, only the certainty that the voice sounded familiar enough to make her pause. Long enough to make a mistake. After that, time dissolved. She remembered a struggle, brief and panicked, hands gripping her arms harder than she expected. She remembered the smell of dirt and oil, the sound of a vehicle door slamming shut. Then darkness, thick and suffocating. When she came to, she was no longer in town. The barn was already familiar to her by then, though she didn't know how she knew that. Her body understood before her mind did. The cold ground beneath her, the way light filtered through broken boards, the smell of decay and animals long gone. She was restrained, not tightly, but enough to make movement pointless, enough to teach her quickly what resistance would cost. She told investigators later that the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the waiting. Days blurred together, measured only by light and darkness, hunger and thirst. Whoever kept her there didn't speak much. Sometimes they didn't appear at all. Other times, footsteps approached slowly, deliberately, as if to remind her that escape was an illusion. She learned to stay quiet, to stay small. She learned that surviving meant becoming invisible. She tried to keep track of time by scratching marks into the dirt, but eventually even that became too much effort. Her body weakened, her thoughts slowed. She began to forget her own voice, what it sounded like when she laughed, when she spoke freely. The barn became her entire world, shrinking her existence down to a single dark space. There were moments when she thought about screaming, about making noise until someone heard her. But the barn was too isolated. Even if she screamed, no one would come. Worse, she feared that screaming would bring the wrong person faster. She listened instead. She listened for patterns, for mistakes. She noticed that her captor was careless in one way. They believed she was broken beyond resistance. They believed fear had erased her will. That belief was their mistake. One night, the barn door wasn't secured properly. Just enough, not open, not inviting, just careless. She waited. Her body screamed at her to stay still, to survive another night, but something deeper pushed her forward. When she moved, pain exploded through her muscles, but she didn't stop. She didn't think. She acted. Freedom didn't come easily. She collapsed outside the barn, breath tearing through her chest, vision blurring. She didn't run far. She didn't need to. She just needed to be seen. When the farmer found her, she barely recognized the sound of his voice as human. She remembered the light, the shock on his face, the way his fear mirrored her own. After that, everything moved quickly, too quickly to process. Back in town, whispers followed her recovery. People speculated, filled in gaps with imagination. Some called her a miracle. Others questioned how she survived. Few understood the cost. Police expanded the investigation, returning to the barn, tracing tire marks, footprints, anything left behind. The realization settled in slowly and heavily. Whoever had done this knew the area well. They hadn't chosen the barn at random. They had planned. As she lay in the hospital bed, watching shadows move across the ceiling, she realized something else. During her captivity, she had heard a radio once. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. A local station. The same one that played every morning at the diner. That meant one terrifying thing. Her captor hadn't taken her far at all. They had been close the entire time. Sleep never came easily after that realization. Every time her eyes closed, her mind replayed the same thought in different forms. Close, familiar, watching. The barn had not been some distant nightmare hidden deep in the wilderness. It had been part of the same world she walked through every day. The same roads, the same voices, the same faces she smiled at while refilling coffee cups. Investigators pushed gently but persistently. They asked about voices, habits, smells, anything she might remember. At first, she insisted she couldn't identify her captor, but memory has a way of resurfacing when it feels safe enough to do so. Small details began to emerge. A cough, a limp she had noticed once before, the way the person avoided eye contact, as if afraid of being seen too clearly. She remembered now why the voice had made her stop that night. It belonged to someone she had seen before. Someone who knew her routine. Someone who knew when she left work, which way she walked, how quiet the town became after closing. Police revisited the diner. They reviewed footage again, slower this time, looking not just for her, but for anyone lingering. A vehicle appeared in the background of one camera frame, parked longer than necessary, engine idling. It wasn't clear enough to identify the driver, but it was enough to narrow possibilities. The barn held more secrets as well. Beneath old hay and broken boards, officers found items that did not belong there. Food packaging from local stores. A flashlight identical to one sold at a nearby gas station. Rope purchased recently, not something left behind years ago. Each detail pointed toward someone methodical, patient, and disturbingly confident. The town changed once fear replaced relief. Doors locked earlier. Conversations lowered when strangers passed by. People began to look at one another differently, searching for signs they had once ignored. The idea that someone among them was capable of such cruelty settled like a sickness. She was released from the hospital under protection and moved somewhere quiet, somewhere undisclosed. Her body healed faster than her mind. Sudden noises still sent her heart racing. She avoided mirrors, afraid of the person looking back at her, thinner, harder, changed in ways she couldn't name. One evening, weeks later, she asked to speak with the lead investigator again. She had remembered something new, not a face, not a name, but a habit. Her captor had whistled sometimes, softly, the same tune, over and over, a tune she had heard before, played absent-mindedly by someone sitting at the diner counter during slow afternoons. That was enough. They brought in a man who lived alone on the outskirts of town, close enough to walk to the diner, close enough to know the abandoned properties no one visited anymore. He denied everything calmly, almost convincingly. But evidence has a way of stacking up, and lies eventually crack under their own weight. When confronted with the items found in the barn, his composure slipped. When they played audio from the diner's security footage, capturing faint whistling in the background, his silence said more than words ever could. He was arrested quietly, without spectacle. No dramatic chase, no final confrontation, just handcuffs clicking shut in a town parking lot while people watched from a distance, stunned by how ordinary he looked. The trial came later. She testified once, briefly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. She did not describe everything. She didn't need to. The facts spoke loudly enough. He was sentenced, removed from the world he had preyed upon, locked away from the routines he once studied so carefully. Life did not return to normal after that. Not for her, not for the town. Some damage leaves marks that can't be erased, only learned to be lived with. She left Colorado not long after, carrying memories she would never fully unpack. Sometimes, late at night, she still thought about the barn, about how close help had been and how invisible she had become. But she also thought about the moment she stepped into the light, broken but alive, and how survival itself had become an act of defiance. She no longer believed places were honest simply because they were quiet. She understood now that danger didn't always hide in darkness or distance. Sometimes it sat close by, smiling politely, waiting. And sometimes, against all odds, the person who disappears finds a way to return.